What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to be talking about the Bitcoin price chart, along with the altcoin market, as we all sit idly by waiting to see if this Russell 2000 can break its way off into new all-time highs and take the altcoin market with it, as history has obviously shown the correlation between these two, with the broader indexes with the mega caps relating to Bitcoin, and of course our small and mid caps and breadth relating to our altcoins over here in the cryptocurrency market. But as Q4 kicks off, we've got a little bit of green over here in the stock market and quite a bit of green over here in the cryptocurrency market. You may have seen all over Twitter, at least I do nonstop, welcome to Q4, the most bullish month of every 4-year cycle. And so in Markets in the Morning, I covered this, but I figured I'd go more in depth into it into a video of what is Q4? Why does everybody talk about Q4 being so bullish? And how did Q4 do back in 2021? Of course, this market is built on the idea of 4-year cycles, block reward halvings, magic, all that good stuff, but also Q4. But as I mentioned to kick off the week, I stated that there are a series of indicators emerging in the crypto market that are nearly identical to what happened at 2021's top. Unless if the Russell 2000 and the altcoin market break out, I'll be highlighting these all week. So until we can get that to happen, which is certainly possible, and until we can get that to happen, which is certainly possible, we're going to look at it through the lens of 2021. And well, if we're entering into Q4 should be exceptionally bullish, right? At least that's what Twitter says. Now, this is Q4 of 2021. And go back in here and look at it to see the dates that line up in here. There's October 1st. There is December 31st. So where do we start and where do we end? Pretty much the exact same place. But what was fascinating about Q4 of 2021 is that by the time we got here, really the bull run all took place back in here. We covered that throughout the entire bear market, that 90% of the altcoins actually set their all-time highs over here. And everything that happened in here was just a retrace. Only about 10% of coins were really able to exceed what they had done back in April and May earlier in 2021. The November Q4 rally was actually quite dismal. You can see that by looking at Litecoin, how the Q4 rally was really just a retrace. We can see that by looking at XRP, that the Q4 rally was really just a retrace. We see that by looking at Tron. It was just a retrace. Dogecoin, the most popular retail coin of the market, back in 2021, nothing more than a retrace. And you can see that if I just take all of these off here. That was Dogecoin. That was Q4, right? So Q4, this exceptionally bullish time in crypto, what we saw was that it was actually just a retracement for most altcoins. The exceptions to that are the few names that we can all remember that didn't do just that, such as Ethereum, which did set a new high, Solana, which had a big run into that moment. The FTX token, FTT, set a new high, and so did AVAX. Those were the top names back then. But that wasn't the case for the majority of the market. The majority of the market was just this like retrace action that ended up happening here in Q4. And that this final push that happens here for Bitcoin is really nothing more than that, as the market really just kind of teetered out on itself here. So when people talk about Q4 being absolutely epic, most coins either didn't quite get back to their previous high or were able to just kind of barely clip through it. And there was really just a few of them that were able to do anything kind of meaningful into Q4. But the majority of the market really kind of looked like this, including the big names like XRP, Dogecoin, Chainlink, etc. One chart behavior in here that's very interesting to me is Hedera hash graph. And so what we could see in here is Q4 starts right here, and this is really Q4. Starting here, it gets all its way up here, and by the time the quarter comes to an end, it kind of ends right back where it began. But Q4 consisted of a retrace, a breakdown, and then back to really where it started. Similarly to how Bitcoin kind of started Q4 and then came back to where it was to end Q4, except Hedera's was more like that, but also not setting a new high as Q4 starts right here. We're pretty much already past the peak already in September. Here's Q4, a lot of waddling around in here, breaking down, and then coming back to back test to close out Q4. But at the same time, what was the kind of dynamic that we saw in the market back in 2021? It's that kind of similar to what we've seen already this year and similar to what we saw in 2017 and similar to 2013, that as we get to the end of the year, we get through the elections, what happens? We have like the bull run that happens there post-election. We really did precisely the exact same thing. But of course, what everybody's looking for here on Hedera is to say, no, it's got to, at a minimum, do this stuff, right? It's got to at least look like that, right? Something along those lines. But if you recall, like back in 2021, when we were in Q4, not necessarily everything did that, right? Majority of the market, it was just like a retrace that ended up happening. But that we got the post-election breakout, the big fall. Here we are ripping back up. Timing's really kind of like right on point for where this stuff should be happening in here. And then we just kind of chilling. And that really, it still is acting a lot like 2021, but it would imply that you're probably closer to being like around December of 2021, right? And so when we look at these oscillators and we show that we've got these bearish divergences that are happening over here on Bitcoin, where these crosses are happening here. I'll get rid of those. These are the Q4 starts and ends. But that we have the rising in price on the reduced strength and the crossover in the MACD. Then over here, we have the rise in price on the reduced relative strength and the reduced MACD. And if we were to make a comparison of just, when the breakout started for things like Hedera, the big rally, this has really just been nothing more than a retrace into this stuff. Where would you imply that we are in here? It's kind of like we're like late into Q4 already here on these altcoins. And then you look over here at these altcoins to see that the majority of them are just retraces of what happened in November of 2024. And that while maybe Hedera necessarily wasn't the one to do this time, XRP instead was the one to do it this time. That there were still some that were able to already go ahead and do this move in here. Just it wasn't Hedera's turn this year. XRP was the recipient. So as we enter into Q4, I'm not here to scare you. I'm not here to sell the bear messaging. I know that's what X wants to create it as, and content creators want to create it as people seizing an opportunity, right? The reality is whenever the crowd gets a little nervous and antsy, they do stop clicking affiliate links. They stop visiting sponsors' websites. So there's an incentive to keep that bull messaging going. And hence the focus is never on Q4 of our last cycle. The focus is on Q4 of 2017, where Bitcoin runs from $3,000 to $20,000, and we have like the most glorious alt season of our lives. But this is the reality of what Q4 last time was, right? And so my job, at least the way I treat my job, is to try to come on here and be straightforward with you. When we go through these nasty stuff and this nasty price action happening in here, I'm not coming on here to spill you a bunch of hopium on things like this to say, hey, look, I think we're going to recover. Here's the comparisons. This is where I think we are within the cycle, and that, I think we're going to be good. I think we'll pull our way out of here. This is from back in February, and I'm sure if you follow me on X, you see my post. Typically, bull posts can get like 2,000 likes on it. But when you're in the depths of despair like this, people don't want to like it, right? Because that's not what the emotion is of the market at the time. But we'll present it in that environment to say this is where we could be. And that the ideas of us working our way up here all make sense to do these types of things and to have these ABC corrections and then push up to these new highs. None of this is built on hopium. There was logical reasoning and justifications behind these discussions to get us in here. It's just that, we're working this thing out. If we're going to draw Q4 comparisons in there, that's fine. If we all want to be hyped about Q4, that's fine. I'm not here to ruin that party, but I just want to make sure that I am showing you all the data and that you have a true understanding of what Q4 was in 2021. That this was Q4. It had an initial pop. It wasn't like 2017. And a lot of the altcoins in the market were just a retrace, right? And again, I'm not sitting here trying to predict it. I'm just showing you the data. I'm showing you where we're at. And I'm saying be mindful of a 702 Fibonacci retracement happening right here where the crowd gets euphoric. My thoughts are if the Russell does break out of here, it's probably good for the altcoin market. And that everything that we do see here would strongly mimic what happened in here, that this was just one pit stop and that this would have enough time to be able to save itself similarly to like we had back in here back in January and February of 2024. And then we'll all be looking for some type of like 5-wave parabola to build itself in here. The crowd goes wild. We get euphoric. It's never coming back. And it would be just like back in March of 2024. If you can recall that for people who were here, it was highly euphoric in March of 2024 as we were going back into those retraces. I think we would see that type of dynamic happen here in the market in the event that this breaks out and that this breaks out, and that there's probably going to be a setup for a really nice breakout trade. But until that confirms itself that this is more than a retrace for Bitcoin or a breakout for the Russell or a breakout for the altcoin market, which even when the top came in here, there was this little 702 retracement that happened right here at the top, right in there, back to 702. Those things just still can't be ruled out with us being right here until it shows evidence that the Russell gets out and that the altcoin market gets out at the exact same time. Till then, this is a retrace. Bitcoin's a retrace. If we can get a confirmed breakout and obvious evidence of it, man, I'll be the first one to jump on here and say, dude, this looks good. Till then, I'm going to make sure that I am showing these things on my channel. So I'm locked in. I'm watching every day, paying attention to the Russell 2000, paying attention to the altcoin market, and paying attention to Bitcoin. In past cycles like 2013 and 2017, Q4 was epic. We're talking massive gains. But that was not the case in 2021. The story was very different. So as we enter into Q4, and the story is outrageously bullish for Q4, just keep an eye on it, be critical, be observant, listen to what the market is saying. That's my point. As you all know, I'm mostly long the market. I've taken a defensive play with 1/3 of my portfolio. I'm waiting to see the clear direction show up in here or something to trigger to tell me to do something differently. Otherwise, I'm just sitting back trying to present both sides of the argument. And this week, really focusing on this one right here. We'll get back to more of the mixed stuff next week, but I really want to present it this week. So, all right, that's going to be it for this one, guys. Very rare we do markets in the morning and then release a video later in the day, but I actually think we did it last week too. So, hey, now I'm setting a trend and expectations. I need to watch out for that. But all right, check out the newsletter, blockchainbacker.substack.com. The most recent one builds both sides, right? So the bear case and the bull case, as we all conditionally await to see how the Russell 2000 does to get our escape out of here for that altcoin market. It comes with a 52-minute audio recording where I read it and explain the charts at the same time. There's a link in the description of this video to the newsletter at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Otherwise, I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. Happy Wednesday, my dudes, and I'll catch in with you soon. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.